Order, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a roll call.
Mayor Hassler.
Here.
Alderman Smith.
Here.
Alderwoman Johnson. Here. Alderman Donovan.
Here.
Alderman Jokerst.
Here.
Alderman Eidman.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Prince.
Here.
Alderwoman Armbruster. Here. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Very good. Move for approval of the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Takes us down to the city administrator's report.
So you got an updated report at your seats. A couple of things to pass on. Item 4, we continue to wait for the Corps of Engineers to approve the installing of the signs up on the levee. They have not given us the okay as of yet. Supposedly it's sitting on somebody's desk waiting to be signed. We'll see. We're hoping so. So we haven't moved any further on that. And I know Fish and Wildlife is ready to install the signs. They're very anxious. And you may have heard or read, St. Genevieve County did away with their UTV permit requirements. So if you live in the county, you don't have to have a permit to drive a UTV on the roads. However, our ordinance still requires that there be a permit if you're on the streets. So we had 3 sections to that. One of the sections is that you're required to have a permit. Here's the things that you have to present to us. In lieu of that, you get to have a county permit and you wouldn't have to worry about getting a city permit. So our ordinance is still in effect. We can look to amend it. We can leave it alone. We're still requiring that they show their driver's license, insurance, and they sign a waiver of liability for the city. So we'll just keep doing what we're doing. We just won't send anybody we were sending them to the courthouse if they needed a permit, just to get one from the county if they needed one from them. But at this point, it'll just be if you're in the city, you need to have a permit.
Can we make sure, since we have already communicated those changes on social media, that we communicate that when their county permit expires, they will need a city permit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just feel like we just changed it and did a good job communicating those changes, and would hope we can communicate again that it's changing again.
Any other questions?
No other questions. Takes us to our staff reports. Gary, you're up first. Very well.
All right.
Ooh, we did a lot of mulching, all the parks, the downtown, bathrooms, everything's been mulched. We did the Welcome Center also. Prepared mowers for a mowing season that has started. Everything's been mowed once. We did some severe cleaning on some storm drains. Washed mud under the trestle after one little flash flood. Cleared debris from the bridges on the South Gabri Creek. We did filled sandbags and the blocks for the floodgates, which luckily we didn't have to use. We removed the wiring from the snowplow wiring from the pickup that Alliance is getting rid of. And we installed battery switches on all our dump trucks. We're having some battery issues. And all the city bathrooms, park bathrooms are all open. Bob?
What's your street passing schedule? I mean, do you have a schedule where you're gonna?
They just started mixing hot mix this week, so we're gonna get the water patches and everything done right away and start potholing.
Okay. Thanks.
We don't really have a set. You
Try
know,
to get so much.
yeah, we'll just hit areas, a couple loads a day, so.
Use the roller with that?
Mm-hmm.
You want to comment about the drain thing up there?
Oh, well, I don't know, did you even tell them about that we met with the MoDOT guy up at the river? Well, we did, and we talked to him, and he got with the railroad, and the drain under the railroad tracks is open. They dug a ditch all the way to the river, so we've been up there the last couple of days cleaning ditches, and so there should be no more water standing on the road. So.
That one that they had blocked underneath the Burlington?
No, that one, there's two pipes up by that bluff.
Mhm.
This is the one down farther where there's the big hole in the concrete bulkhead. That one, they got opened up and they dug it all the way to the river, so it drains. So now we can do some repair work on the road. Okay. Do I need to be Kenny and Dave tonight too?
No, we'll be good. So, y'all have Toby's report, is he traveling tonight?
He's traveling, he'll be on Zoom call during the meeting tonight. Maybe some information for later today, later this evening when we talk about the American Relief Act or Rescue Act money. But I didn't want him reading his report while he's driving.
Very good.
Thought that was safe. But you've got a report, marketing, we've got a TV ad from WSIL that we can use in other forms, but that's to advertise and using state money in the southern part of Illinois, southern part of Missouri, trying to drum up some tourism business. I don't know if you looked at the link from KMOV when I sent that out. So we had that. That was a great piece on the city. So we'll use that and link to it and other media. I think we put it out on Facebook and linked to that and pushed it out there so people can see it. And Toby's looking at a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. We're trying to, discussion has been, how about having the availability of a walking tour for people? So you might not get into the depth that if you go into the houses with somebody from the organizations, you're not going to get that same information, that depth of information, but at least a little bit of information, some teaser information. And then people, if they're not open, they'll at least have that where they can walk around and see, maybe see inside the house with some pictures, get some information over the phone, in the earphones or whatever, so they kind of have some interest in what's going on. Because sometimes not all the houses are open. So.
And one of the concerns was after 4 or 5 o'clock, if people are getting into town, it'd be something nice for them to do in the evening, especially in the summer when it's a little cooler, and then hopefully then they come back the next day and take some tours or go to the museum or something like that.
Yeah. So that was it.
Okay, y'all have Kenny's report? Any questions on that? Same way with David. David's not being able to join us tonight, but he submitted his report. Okay. Any further questions? Takes us, we need to talk about COVID. Things are moving along. Our numbers are still down, and so we'll just keep moving along. Shots are becoming more available, I think, in the city. So
today they opened up, I know for sure.
did they?
No public.
Good deal. Okay, are there any committee reports? Joe, there was a long planning and zoning meeting, an hour long. I was kind of surprised. Yeah. You weren't here. Oh. How's everything going at the park? Park board?
Park's good. We met on Monday last week, and we've got a few committees set up, which I think I've told you about before, for the first few initiatives that we want to phase out. First phase of our walking trail, restrooms, the adventure playground area, and a fundraising committee. Fundraising committee reported back to us, and they announced our Movies in the Park series. It's going to take place this summer from June through October, the last Saturday of the month. I can get a flyer for y'all if you'd like. We publish that information on Facebook this past Monday, and it's been pretty well received. I think in 24 hours, about 90 shares on it, and a lot of banter and talk about it, so it's all good. And then not a lot of other updates, still kind of working through trying to get some, our Trails Committee walk through the park and kind of mark the rough idea of the trail so we can start getting some cost estimates, so we start to know how much we've got to fundraise to achieve these phases. We've got 2 grants that we applied for the trails. One of them, the Community Foundation grant, and that's been awarded, but whether we can apply it or not depends on whether we get the state trails grant, because the state's trails grant is a matching grant, and so it's like an 80-20 grant. So I'm still kind of waiting to hear back on that.
So is that trail in the same general area where it is now, or are they going to expand?
There's a lot of it that overlaps with what's there now. The asphalt will be taken out and be replaced ideally with about a 10-foot wide concrete path. For the most part, a lot of it will stay on track with what's there now, but it's also going to connect to a lot of the amenities. Most of our amenities don't have ADA accessibility and things of that. You got to cut through the grass to get to the basketball court and things of that nature, to the bleachers for the soccer field. So the path will have these kind of deviate in a few spots to allow for access from parking lots to those.
It'd be nice if it'd be wider.
Oh,
Yeah, that would
That's
allow.
the biggest complaint.
Yeah, and that's going to allow for a lot more recreation. One, you can have a couple people there walking side by side if they go to the park to walk together. The parents can take their strollers out there and not have issues. You can also open it up to rollerblading and possibly bicycles and things of that nature. So.
Thank you very much. Any other reports?
I'd like
Bob?
to see if we have 2 board members here, Cameron and I think you got a couple of titles, maybe. Well, anyway, I want to see if they want to comment about anything about St. Jim TV. Either one of you guys?
I'm just here because you got an appointment to join the...
Yeah.
A good appointment too, I think.
Oh, my goodness. We're glad
Yeah, with
it's
Ed,
coming
yeah,
back.
it's awesome.
Very good.
Well, thank you, man.
Thank
I know I've been attending the tourism committees. There's gonna be some changes there. It's pretty exciting, because it's been same old for a while, but there's gonna be some pretty drastic changes, I think. And but they have to be done very well, because you're dealing with outside monies and stuff like that. So as that progresses, Happy has been on top of that and moving that along with Toby. So it's going to be some good stuff coming ahead. So, are there any public comments? Okay, if there's no public comments, at 6:13 we are going to hold a public hearing to consider an annexation petition filed with the city on March 18th, 2021 by GHS Holdings, LLC. All territory annexed to the city of St. Genevieve is classified as R1 single-family residential upon annexation. All of this particular parcel, known as 2121551 Highway 32, is in St. Genevieve County, Missouri, and is continuous compact to the existing city limits of the city of St. Genevieve, Missouri.
So when you brought in Luna, this was the property next to it, they did not come in at the same time. So what we're doing is just annexing. They have finished construction of the building, and now we're ready to bring that piece in.
Sounds good.
Good.
Any questions? It was a sharp public hearing. We'll close the public hearing at 6:14.
Okay.
So we got some stuff to hand out before we approve the consent agenda.
Oh.
You need one, Mayor?
Yes.
Thanks, sir. I'm off from.
I'll try to do it.
I know. Sorry about that. Forever.
Hey, thanks. Move approval.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. So
Can't move in that.
that takes us to old business, which there is none. So we're gonna have some new business. So bill number 4425, an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Taylor Engineering to survey and draft subdivision plots for a section of the Highway 32 Industrial Park.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion for a second reading of bill number 4425.
Second?
All in favor of that?
Aye.
Second reading of bill number 4425, an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Taylor Engineering to survey and draft subdivision plats for a section of the Highway 32 Industrial Park.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a roll call, please.
Alderman Smith.
Yes.
Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no's. Bill number 4425 now becomes ordinance 4345.
Very good, thank you. Takes us to the first reading of bill number 4426, an ordinance providing for the annexation of certain real estate owned by GHS Holdings LLC, 21551 Highway 32, into the city of St. Genevieve existing corporate limits.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Takes us to the first reading of bill number 4427, an ordinance of the city of St. Genevieve, Missouri, amending the personal manual as set forth below. Motion to approve.
Second?
Is there any discussion on that?
Yes.
Oh.
I'd like to make a motion that the word company throughout that bill be replaced with the word city. It makes that narrative less ambiguous when we look at it.
Yeah, we can make those changes before the second reading next time.
So I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Is there any other business? Any more communications or discussions? Well, with that, I will adjourn the meeting for tonight. That was fast.
Directional parking signs, we've had a request, but Toby's actually, because he attends these meetings, and I've talked to Chris Collins with the Park Service on occasion, but he and Toby see each other probably every other day. One of the issues is that they're looking at eventually needing some directional signs for their parking areas. So with the St. Genevieve Museum, they have the parking lot it comes off of Gabourey, South Gabourey. And they're worried that people will come up to Market, turn, drive by the building. There isn't any parking on Market Street. They won't circle the block. They're on to something else. So they feel that there needs to be some sort of parking sign on South 4th Street before you get to South Gabourey. And then also, the Park Service, National Park Service, is also thinking that they need something along Market Street to say there is parking behind the Welcome Center. So the question is, do you want us to establish some sort of policy for this, not just necessarily saying, yeah, we'll do this for everybody? Do you want us to make sure it's with nonprofits, with Park Service? We don't want to overload signs, and we've talked about other signs that people have asked for, and trying not to put a lot of signage out there that just kind of gets in people's faces, and then they ignore the important signs like speed limit,
Yeah, important.
yeah, no parking here, that kind of stuff. Yes, sir.
can you go ahead and call the meeting to order and we can approve the agenda and then we can just backtrack to everything you just said?
Would you like me to rewind it for you?
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? I call the meeting to order already.
Yeah, motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else, Joe?
What a stickler.
Motion carried.
Good work, Joe.
It's a meeting.
As far as I'm concerned on the parking signs is, you know, you have the museum, you have a private entity, you know, and it's a slippery slope because if we're doing that for a private business,
Yeah.
you know, then I don't think that's fair to the taxpayers myself.
Yeah, that's where my feelings come in. I don't mind them having
Yeah.
a sign, but I don't know that it's our responsibility to tell
Pay
people
for
to
it.
park at that business.
And maybe that's their intent, is just to find out if they can put up a sign.
Yeah.
Well, and that's it. If you think that we ought to have those organizations pay for, we would install because we.
Well, we can install, but I
But
don't
if you want
think,
them to pay for it, we can.
I think
work
that's,
with them.
I'm okay with that, with the signage, but,
Yeah.
you know, but not that the city taxpayers pay for it.
So they are installed on our property, city property. Right.
And I would think as long as the board would have approval of some oversight of placement to make sure it's not like a super cluttered, you know, or maybe not even board, but David or somebody having some oversight to make sure it doesn't get too cluttered with other signage.
Would that sign, since it's in the historic district, would something like that go in front of the Heritage Commission? I think I've got some concerns about size and
Yeah.
style and just overall design, if this is gonna be something
That's why we
Gonna happen
almost
every
need to
once in a
approve
while.
each one on a one-to-one basis
Right.
and stuff, so we can control,
And she's right.
you know.
With Heritage
She's right.
recognition.
That would go through
Yeah.
Heritage and
I
us.
think that's a
Right.
good idea.
I think there are some signs, though, that David can approve. There's, you know, there are some signs that businesses can put up that David does approve without the Heritage Commission, you know, doing.
but that's on their property,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or any sign.
Any sign that goes
Any
up.
sign that regulates traffic in that,
Yeah.
no, that doesn't have to go through them. And do you consider this to be a safety issue?
Yeah.
To let people know ahead of time that they can park or not, if it's just a convenience for their patrons to be able to find a place to park?
I don't know that it's necessarily a safety issue, but I can see it being a convenience thing. Like, there's been times like, I'll be up in the city and, you know, can't find a place to park, so I might just go on to the next place. You know, so there's a risk of losing out on business if people aren't able to find convenient parking in a timely manner.
yeah.
But I don't know if I don't necessarily see the safety issue unless somebody's just completely disoriented and trying to drive.
And I've also recommended sandwich boards that say parking in the rear, so you can put those out when you're open. And they do have signs for the museum that are on, but it's on those posts and it just faces out, and I don't think most drivers are gonna see those. But with the sandwich board, that you're passing by, it's at least sitting out there and to let people know, and that's up to them.
Well, and with the museum in particular, they could, if they don't have street parking right out front, they just go up to 3rd Street, make a right, and then hang another right, correct?
Yeah.
So,
But I think their big concern is people are not aware. As they're
Yeah.
driving, they don't know there's parking in the rear.
So where would their parking sign be? Would it be in front of their building? Or are you talking about putting it in front of, like, by Gabourey?
Yeah, it'd be on South 4th Street before you get to South Gabourey.
And then there's a bridge right there, so it might become a bit of a safety issue.
See, because I don't know
Coming
if
in
people would be paying
market.
attention for a parking sign there, where, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't want to clutter up their front end either.
I would think the best thing for them to do is put a sign in the front of the museum. When they're coming to the museum, parking in the rear, they go down, they make a right, and make another right, and they're in the back of the building.
You know, because if they're coming in Market Street, main thoroughfare, they're not gonna see the one on.
Or you put it on Gabourey and put museum parking, then you make a right. That's easy.
No, it's their courtyard now.
I can see where it'd be beneficial to have one at Gabourey, right there on this side of the bridge, that has an arrow there, museum parking, and just directs you right down that street to make a right.
so.
But I think that's right.
I still think it needs to be done on a one-on-one basis,
right?
you know, we need to, it'd be hard to set a policy up with all the different entities and different requests, but I don't know that we've had that many in the last few years.
Well, really, all we got is two, is the parking lot for the National Park Service, which is the Welcome Center, and then the museum, right?
Right. But, you know, once you open this up, you're likely to get more requests, and that's why I'm trying to.
And you did mention,
gauge.
you did stipulate the not-for-profit
Right.
entity, so I think that's a good angle.
Yeah.
But with the Park Service, I mean, it's a federal entity, so is our city going to be responsible for advertising for the federal entity?
Again, they could buy it, they could buy the signs.
Okay.
And
I
we
didn't
would
know if that's where you
install.
were going at.
I mean, but that's,
No, but I like what you're thinking.
yeah, just depends on where you want to go
I
with it.
like it.
Okay, I didn't know if when you mentioned the nonprofit stipulation, if that's where you were going with the funding
Oh.
part of it.
No, but thank you.
Okay.
I was just thinking about the not-for-profit and federal, to my mind, as a business owner, are separate from businesses.
Yeah.
Because I want to err on the side of caution,
Yeah.
so we don't have every business in town saying, hey, I have a parking spot right here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So limiting the parking signs to,
Not-for-profit.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
okay,
That's what I'm thinking.
that makes sense.
yeah. Because you would have the state doesn't have a parking lot, so they don't have that kind of issue, but
Right.
you also have the state park.
I like your
I'd
idea.
almost lean toward the sandwich board and see if that works for them, and then if they continue to have issues, we could look at maybe putting some sort of a policy in place.
Yeah, we can try drafting up something ahead of time and run it through Heritage Commission, run it through the board, and then see if everybody agrees to it. Yeah. Okay.
I agree with that.
All right. Item number 2.
That was the,
No, that was 1. Item
Stop.
2,
You can
American
stop at
Relief
2.
Plan.
oh,
It's a rescue
I
plan.
didn't reprint my new one.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't get a new one.
Yeah, thank you,
Why
Bill.
didn't you tell me that?
We sent that out. I didn't make copies. It's the same
Yeah.
3 items,
He
just in a
likes to
different
sneak
order.
things in. You
I got it, yeah.
Fine.
I think I got an email or
Yeah.
What's
Gotta wait till Monday
What's this
before-
new car for the administrator?
that. Email.
You just rearranged the order.
Volvo.
Just where we're going in now.
All right, Kathy.
1 becomes 3.
I got it.
Now where we at? We're at the American Relief
No,
Plan.
like something else that comes up.
Oh,
So this is the money that is coming from the federal government that is designated to the city, state, and the federal government's also going to be distributing money for various uses. So I wanted to bring this to you to come up with some early ideas, because we don't have any direction yet from Treasury Department on what exactly everything can be used for. We do know that it says water, sewer, broadband as a broad interpretation, and it just says water, sewer, broadband pretty much. We have tourism that's included in there. There's also other items that are listed with the approval that may be out of our, what we're able to do as a city, because we don't have that much staff, and we don't have the infrastructure that the bigger cities have, that might be able to use some of that money for what they've recommended that they can be used for. So again, the eligible expenses or expenditures, public health emergency with respect to coronavirus. It includes assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. So that's where the tourism part comes in. That, you know, we do the advertising for tourism, and we do things that need to be kept going with that. To respond to workers performing essential work during the COVID-19 public health emergency by providing premium pay to eligible workers of the metropolitan city, non-entitlement unit of local government or county that are performing such essential work, or by providing grants to eligible employers that have eligible workers. And again, for us, we didn't have any issues with paying people, so we didn't have any money that we needed to pull out of that we had paid extra. We were lucky. with being able to staff with who we staffed. So C is for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue of such metropolitan city, non-entitlement union of local government, et cetera, et cetera. We did not have a reduction in revenue, so we don't have revenue to replace exactly. There are some areas that we probably can look at that we did not have as much revenue, but overall our sales taxes were surprisingly in good shape.
So what was the time frame though, Kathy, in that tax? So there had to be a time limit in when there was a reduction in sales tax.
Again, this is the way it's listed. We're waiting to see what Treasury says as to what that time schedule is going to be. So we're figuring at this point, we're figuring from March 1st, 2020 on, based on previous CARES Act funding. And then item D, to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. So that's pretty open. So I've asked Steve to come up with some ideas, asked Toby to come up with some ideas on what we could start working on a list of things that you would want to see the city potentially pursue.
What is that? What is the number? How much money is we're talking about?
So we're looking at this point, a little over $813,000 estimated. That comes to us in two separate submittals. We're supposed to get the first within 60 days of when this was passed. It'll be distributed to the states, and the state distributes it to us. And then 6 months down the road should be the next 6 months, or something like that. Yeah, should be the next group of second half of it would be distributed.
So this is different from the last time. We don't have to apply for the funds through the county.
Right.
It's coming from the state to the city.
This will all be distributed directly to the city. We will deposit it and track it. We already have a fund that's government grants and that, so we'll just track it there.
And it expires at the end of 2024.
Right, December 31st, 2024. So if you want to start, we can start with Steve on a couple of the projects we've talked about. Let him go through a few things, items that we.
Podium.
Yeah. So go ahead.
After talking with Happy about this, pretty much a blessing, but I've listed about 5 or 6 items that could really use some attention that would be really hard to budget for, or decrease cost on later projects. One would be the 2 creek crossings on North Cavalry Creek. That'd be Main Street and 4th Street. Those water lines that go underneath the creek, one of them is attached to the side of the bridge, which if anybody's ever looked over the edge of that bridge, it could really use some attention. The other one would be the creek crossing underneath 4th Street at Leahy. That water line's 26 feet deep. There's no way we could ever work on it if needed. That would have to be some large contractor come in and do that work. But that would also give us control valves for the north end of town. In the event that there's a large natural disaster or emergency, we could isolate either feed from the county to the city, or feed the county to the city, either way, back and forth. Or if the problem is on the north end of town, we could isolate those control valves and still feed the rest of town. So and with the water line projects that are upcoming down the road, that would decrease the cost of those projects and allow us to do more at that time, which long term, that would be a really good idea there. The second one would be the electrical control panel located inside the water plant. I know I've reported numerous times that the corrosion inside the water plant's hindering us sometimes. We spent the past week with an electrician in the water plant. We've tried to shut down electrical systems. The rust and corrosion is bleeding through. One of the electricians was actually doing work in there, and he said with the breaker off, he was still getting 69 volts of electricity through the breaker. So there are hazard concerns in the plant. That project would take the master control panel and move it outside the water plant into a separate building where it's not exposed into the corrosive environment. I did get prices on that last year, and we were looking around the $150,000 range on that job. The next one would be a fine screen at the headworks of the wastewater treatment plant. That would remove the grit, the trash, the the jumpsuits, the ramen noodle packages, all the trash that gets discharged, which clogs up pumps and motors, and also makes the farmers very unhappy when we land apply the biosolids to their fields, because you're basically just spreading the trash across their fields. The next one would be a belt press system for the wastewater treatment plant. That would be one where you would take the biosolids, it's the solid waste removed from the wastewater. It's put into a concentrated form, and right now it's currently land applied on the farmers' fields, like I just said. With a belt press, you'd basically be able, we spend about $60,000 a year to have that stuff removed. So basically it would turn into 7 to 8 dumpsters that could go to the landfill each year instead of $60,000. We'd be paying a very small fraction of that. That project would pay back pretty within reason, maybe 5 or 6 years. So there are lots of also.
I think you'd have a very hard time spending all this money in water and sewer.
No, I can spend all of it if you want.
Yeah, I figured that. No, and that's something we know that we've made some progress with some replacement of water and sewer lines, so it's a golden opportunity, really.
Yeah.
So that was some of the things, there's going to be a long list. It's narrowing it down.
Yeah. I mean, there's other items. They get smaller. Some of them get smaller. Some get, are pretty comparable. Some of these projects, the creek crossings, I've got Cochran Engineering pulling those from the separate files that they already have them in to see what they cost individually for 2 new bores underneath the creeks. The belt press, realistically, you're looking at $350,000, $375,000. The fine screen at the headworks, $200,000 to $250,000. So.
Sure spend all the money, right?
Yeah.
But we still have to wait for some decisions with the Treasury and.
We still have to, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be refined first. So that's the public works part of it. Then the other part that I talked to Toby about, because it did include tourism, and he can chime in whenever he wants. But we looked at, we talked about the tour app. That would be one thing that we thought would be a good enhancement for the city. Also looking at redoing their website. Redoing the website for tourism to try to make it a little bit more easier to use or easier to maneuver. Anything else? Maybe in between cell towers. So those were a couple of the things that we had talked about. That would be at least tourism related. So keep those in mind. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to?
Well, while you touched on the tourism website, there's no denying that our city website needs a lot of updating. One thing that we saw that was so restrictive during this pandemic was the city had a hard time putting out immediate notices without the use of Facebook. When we signed a proclamation, well, how do we get this out? It goes to the paper next week. Sometimes we post it, which is great, but the city doesn't have a place where it can easily update outside of Facebook in real time. And so, to me, that's a highlighted need that we saw this past year. And if we're going to do the tourism website considerably. You know, a lot of cities do a blend between their tourism and their city websites so that it runs through the same sites, but it's tagged out appropriately. I think St. Charles is one like that where there's a government.
Like a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, with the parks doing what they're doing right now, I mean, it blends the city and tourism potentially, so I don't know, I don't know what that investment would be, but.
And we'll discuss that with our IT management company. We're getting together tomorrow to talk about some stuff, so that may be brought up. It can be anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 for a new website. So, I mean, it's not as much as putting water underneath a creek, but it's still a chunk of money.
To me, having something that we here at City Hall can easily update, whether it's you or Pam or David, just being able to update it real time and not have to jump through hoops and.
Well, you're looking at a website that we can put the agendas on, we can put the minutes up, it's something that's easily accessible, bill paying. You know, we have accessibility through our website, that's decent, but it's not as good as it can be. So, yeah, we can make those improvements.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'd hope for maybe a little more hardline items and stuff, like some safety things, like a nice chunk of sidewalks or.
I don't know if sidewalks are applicable because it's, again, water, sewer, and broadband. It doesn't say streets, it doesn't say sidewalks, it doesn't say, see, that's what we're waiting for Treasury, but at this point, we don't think that's eligible. Yeah. Yeah.
With due respect given to every issue that's pointed out, they're all important, but if we just heard from Steve that we've got a breaker panel that needs to be relocated in the water plant, I mean, we're opening a breaker, there's still 69 volts on the breaker position. I'd like to see that I'd like to see that take some priority in this listing, and even without discussion of this issue, I'd like to see that happen. Like, that's a safety item. I mean, we're talking water.
Well, it sounds to me like that should happen without that. Regardless of
without considering this.
That should be taken care of.
Right, that's a maintenance issue that needs to be fixed.
But it's a big maintenance issue.
That's not just a maintenance issue. That is you're actually moving all of that electric outside to a new building.
Yeah.
And moving all the electric outside.
And
So
then,
it is
to
a
me,
construction project.
If my understanding is correct, based on, the past 5 minutes, that's a necessary item. That relocation is a necessary item.
Was that 150?
Yeah.
I agree.
Is that just?
I don't want to glance over that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an employee safety thing. I didn't mean to yell across the room, sorry about that.
Does that
Like
mean
I'm at home.
there's an individual breaker that's defective?
No, the breaker was fine, it's the rust and corrosion inside the panels.
Inside the whole
You
panel?
got stray voltage within the panel.
Yeah, it's going where it wants, some may have 30 extra volts,
We checked one, it was a 120 breaker, and it had 190 volts on it. So, and like I said, we've been,
Further equipment degradation or heaven forbid.
yeah, they went through, pulled every breaker out of all the panels, blew them all out, cleaned up the strip on the back of the panel, and they did the best they could with it while they were there.
Yeah, you're fighting an uphill battle doing
Yeah.
that. Yeah. My 2 cents on that.
I'm sorry, and that's not gonna be a quick process. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of preparation in order to shut down and.
The contractor I spoke to is a local company, and they didn't give me a time frame on it, but they said they can do it. Basically, they'll build everything new out there and then use part of the existing panel as like a duct for the wires and run it all out and tie it in piece by piece with no interruption or minimal interruption.
Didn't we just replace that panel like 2 years ago?
Nope. No, this is the master control panel inside the water plant.
So is it gonna have to be enclosed outside then, or is it?
Yes. Yeah, there'll be a concrete pad in a small building. So,
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
you guys are all welcome to swing by the plant anytime. I'll be happy to give you guys a tour and show you what I'm talking about. So,
I was really
yeah,
Make sure Rainey's got rubber gloves on.
yeah.
You mean not rubber gloves on, standing in a bunch of water?
I'd say there's plenty of direct grounds down there with a lot.
Yeah.
That's how I rate.
So, anything else?
That was a few years ago.
I know with CARES Act money, there are some communities that used it to help supplement their fire departments. And I was trying to read under item B on that first slide that you included.
Yeah.
If some kind of, you know, with the coronavirus, our fire department wasn't able to hold like recruiting events or do much of that. And we know they've been short-staffed, so I don't know if there is a way to potentially do some sort of incentive program for new firefighters where maybe after do a trial basis where maybe after a year, if they meet a certain percentage of call-outs, we can give them some sort of bonus stipend, budgeted out of this fund, because, I mean,
Something to look at.
yeah, week after week, every time Ken gives his reports, it's always down with the numbers, and we've not gotten any closer to drumming up ideas on how to get more folks out there. And
Very good.
Okay.
Anything else happen on that?
Unless somebody else has something else they want to recommend or suggest, anything we need to look at. We've got another webinar next Wednesday, and then I think Treasury is supposed to come out with their information like 60 days after it was submitted or approved. So they're still working on their part of it.
I got another one, but obviously not high priority. But the library is seeing a lot of success with their hotspots around town, and potentially a hotspot in Pierre Marquette Park, because there's not one on that end of town.
When they originally looked, the AT&T tower that's out there now was not there.
Mm-hmm.
So when they did their testing, it failed. So
Yeah.
that's why they didn't put one out there.
Yeah.
But that would be a potential now.
Yeah.
Would that fall under broadband?
Yep. As far as I understand. Again, we'll get clarification, but I believe it does. Yep. And we can put it in the, depends on what landlines are available out there, or lines that we can tap into. I'm sorry, it'll be cellular, but we can put it at the park house. So we've got a location, parking lot, easy
Yeah.
access.
Yeah, and if it works out long term, that would eventually be the core, as you can see on the map, the core central area where the splash pad and playground and pavilions would be. So there'd be a lot of outdoor space in the future if we could continue that type of program.
Yeah. And then try to expand it.
Yeah.
Anything else? Next agenda item?
Next agenda item is a closed session.
Can I make a motion that we go into closed session to discuss real estate?
Second. A roll call, please.
Alderman Smith. Yes. Alderwoman Johnson.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderman Jokers.
Yes.
Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Prince.
Yes.
Alderwoman Armbruster.
Yes.
Motion carried.